Hey guys, welcome to a hands-on portfolio project on healthcare analysis. In this project, we'll be analyzing the impact of foreign aid on HIV/AIDS. Background to this project stems from the current freeze of US funding. So sometime in January, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, gave a 90-order freeze on most projects. There are so many articles online. In case you're not aware, you can check them out. So it is a problem. It is a very big problem, especially in the healthcare sector, where these funding are key to major projects like the USAID's major project to HIV care, PEPFAR, and the rest of them. So we want to analyze now that this aid has been frozen, what could possibly happen. We want to quantify it. We know that there is actually a catch now that the aid is frozen, but can we quantify it? Is it even true, or are we just, making up stories? So that is the background to the analysis. It is a real life project that solves real problem. Now, the first thing we'll do is to actually clean our data set, which we will do going into deeper in the project. So I want to show you some key KPIs that you should look out for. So here we have the total aid received. Meanwhile, this is the timeline that we worked with based on the data set that we have, right? And with a focus on Africa, this Africa receives 16% of all aids that all countries received, right? And there were this number of deaths and this number of deaths averted due to HIV. Now, if you come to the US had 27% of all donations that came during this time period, and we were able to calculate the impact ratio. So we found out that for every $1 million that is given out, that 1,800 persons' life is saved. We also now want to check and estimate how many deaths per $1 million when it is being withdrawn by the US based on this amount. And we found out that this amount actually saved 10.39 billion persons, right? If we approximate this, it should be approximately 10 billion lives that this amount, 27% that came from the US, saved. It is quite a lot, right? Work with me as we create the exact dashboard that you are seeing on your screen. Let's get into it. The first thing you should do is to get your data set. Once I discovered this problem, I had to look for a suitable data set that can help me with the analysis, and I went straight to Kaggle. So for you could do two things. You can go straight to kaggle.com, and when you log on to Kaggle, this should be the interface you have. That's if you have an account, but if you don't have an account, you have to create one, right? If you don't want to go through this route, there's a link in my description for you to go to my GitHub and download the data set straight on, right? There's also a link in my GitHub account. You also see the link for the icons that are contained on this dashboard. I've created them already, so you just have to download and use it when the time comes, right? So let's head over to Kaggle. Now, if you want to get the data set by yourself, because this is a very beginner-friendly project, you click on your data set, and here you type foreign aid. You search, okay, because I've searched it for so much time, this is it. So the particular data set I used, I think it should be this. This should be it. Yeah, I think it should be this one. Okay, yeah, this is it. So you download as a zip file, and after downloading you extract. I already have it downloaded, so I'm not going to go through that route again. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this page. So inside here, this is the data sets that I'll be working with, right? It is already on the GitHub account, so you can go straight there and download it. Next thing after getting your data set is to start the actual analysis. So we are going to open a new workbook, right? So this is a new workbook and I want to save it so that we can proceed. So I will just likely save it on my desktop and I'll call it our portfolio project 1. Let's put it healthcare portfolio project 1. So next, you import your data. You go to data, from new query. We're importing this data. The data set comes as a CSV file. So first of all, I'm going to import the HIV deaths data. Now, we are importing using Power Query, but we are not cleaning with Power Query because this project is very beginner friendly. In subsequent projects, we are going to be doing our data cleaning with Power Query. So I will just go ahead and load. I'll close and load. So it's loading. Alright. So I'll close this. So because it's already in a table format, you go to the table design, and I don't like the layout, the style. I prefer something very simple like this. So another thing I'm going to do, because I don't need this thing, I'm going to delete it. We don't want things that occupy space, and we are renaming this to HIV data. Now I'm going to copy it and I would want to change this to this so that they will be the same. But now we'll go over to data cleaning. So to clean this data, the first thing is I'm going to remove columns that we don't really need. Columns like this code, we won't need it. So use the keyboard shortcut Ctrl-, and next I want to rename this to be very short. It's too long for a column name. We already know that it's death averted due to antiretroviral therapy, so we'll just leave it at death averted. Then we'll also leave this to just deaths. Yeah, that does that. Okay, do you have other columns? Okay, there's no other column. So the next thing is to find if there are no values or blank cells. We want to replace them with 0. Something like this date averted. I wouldn't want any blank stuff. So you can check whether there is blank space by coming here. So you can see that we actually have blank cells. So I want to replace these blank cells with 0, right? So use the keyboard shortcut Ctrl-H to find. Because it's blank, we leave this space null, and we want to replace it with 0. So replace all. Nice. So we close and we check if there is blank cell. So you can see that there is no other blank cell, so we cancel, right? We'll do the same. It should be for all of them because we replaced all. Check for blank. You can see we don't have any blank cell again. So the next thing I want to do is to make this to be a number, the year, right? The same thing with here, make it to be number. Format it to be number so that we can do numerical calculations on them, and we don't want it to be whole number. So we do the same thing for here. change it to number, right? And reduce the decimal to be whole number, right? Is there already order? So what is this? We don't need it. Remove it. Now, the last but not the least that I want to do is to make sure that this whole thing, I don't have a negative sign, because you can't have minus 3 deaths or minus 3 deaths averted, right? Is either there is no death averted or there is deaths like 1, 2, 3 and above. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a new column here. You press Ctrl Shift plus, and that will insert a column here. Now I'm going to use the absolute value sign to convert any negative number to positive. Now to convert if there's any negative number, it's surely going to convert them. So I'll copy from down here. So now we've pasted this. We copied what we had here and we pasted it in this column, so we can now delete this. Control minus. We'll do the same thing for here. So equal to absolute, right? Close it and enter. So whatever negative number that was here would have been converted to positive here. Now we copy it, control copy and control home to go back. Click on your D2, control shift down button to highlight everything, right click and paste as values. Now we've pasted what we had here to here, so I can successfully delete this with control minus, right? Good. So with this, I think we have all the cleanup we have to do. Just one more. Right. We have we've done the data cleaning for this particular data set. So I'll save my work and I'll go over and import the next data set. It's also a CSV file. So let's import it. I'll import the foreign aid received. So close and load. Now the data cleaning we are doing here is basically what we did for the HIV data. So I would kind of fast forward the video for you to do it and check back with what I have here. So first thing is to rename. This is age received. I'll copy it. I'll go to my table design, go to data. Okay, it's actually highlighted, so it won't work. Go to data and rename it to this, right? Now I want to change the layout, the design. I don't like it, just like before. Change it to this and then do the normal data cleaning that we did. Remove the columns that will not be needed. Control minus, change this to number. And now you rename this to something shorter. We already know that it is official development assistance received, so we just ODA received, right? That should be it. Come over here, change it to number. ODA. Now if you don't want to do this thing the way I've been doing it because you want to do everything at once and change it, you can actually do this. Highlight the two columns you want and control 1. So with control 1 you can just select number and change both of them to number straight on so that you don't waste so much time. That's for when you have columns that are much. So we've changed it and we have to remove this code because we don't need it. I think that should be all for this, right? Okay, one more thing. Let's make sure that what we have here does not have minus. So highlight this, Control Shift down, copy, go to Control Home to go up, click on A2, Control Shift down, then right click and paste as values. Nice. So you go over and Control minus to delete this particular column. And that is all for this data cleaning. So the next thing we will do is to check if there is a blank. I doubt, but we'll have to check. There is no blank cell, so we are good to go. So we import the last data set. We import it from new query and it's a CSV file. So okay. Then this is the foreign aid given, right? So first of all, we change the design to something that is simple and nice. Then change the name. Can rename it. Rename it to aid giving, right? And we can copy it, go to our table design and rename the table. Nice. So we do the same thing, Control minus, right? We highlight this, hold your shift key, hold the next, the arrow to the right, Control 1, make it to be number. Let's not use this decimal places, you want it to be 0, right? Nice. So we reduce it. This should be ODA given. Good. Same thing, we have to remove this to not be working with it. So the last thing is to make sure that no number here is negative. We don't want that. So we click on this and copy it and paste as value. Then remove this. So with this, our data set is clean. The next thing to do is to calculate our key performance indicators. And to do that, we start with the impact ratio. To successfully calculate the impact ratio, we have to merge some data sets, right? So to do that, we would create a copy of this aid received. Be mindful of what you are selecting here. It should be aid received that you are copying, right? So click OK and rename it as merged data. Okay, I'll copy it, go to my table design and also rename this. Good. So right here we will have the same thing with the age received. So next we go to the HIV data and we want to copy this column. Okay, we'll copy it, Control Shift down, Control C, and go back to our meshed data, go to Control Home to go to the first column, click here and you can paste Control V or you can paste as values, anyone. Then we rename it as deaths, right? Deaths averted. Good. So next, let's calculate the impact ratio. The impact ratio we are calculating now is how many deaths that was averted for $1 received. So to successfully do that, you to be deaths averted, let's use this D2 divided by C2. Okay, and we'll have this. I want to change this column to number. Good. And we want it to be whole number. Then let's rename to impact ratio, that is deaths averted per $1. Good. Nice. Next, let's take a look at what we have here first of all. So you can see that $1 does not even save up to one life. So we cannot gauge with this. And because the amount of money that is usually received doesn't come in bits, it's much. Let's do by 1 million, right? So here will be debt averted per $1 million of aid received. So we start with just this stroke reference makes the formula bulky, so I rather use this E2 times 1 million. Good. Now from here you can easily see what we are looking at. The next thing to do is to get the average of this impact ratio so that we can conclude on how many deaths is averted per $1 million of aid received. So to do that, we use this formula. First of all, let's write the average, and we don't need this. Let's not complicate things for ourselves. So equal to average, right? The average of F2 to F13374. You can see it here. It ends at 13374, so you can easily write it out. Doesn't stress you. Now this error is expected because we are having zeros, and you know that when you're dividing by 0 you get the division error. So what we do is to actually use average if, and the condition is that you should consider only numbers that are above 0. So with this we'll get the average. So we have our 1800. So with this now, we all know that for every $1 million of aid that is received by a country or an entity or a region, that it will save 1800 persons' lives. So next is to perform a US affiliated analysis. By this we mean that we want to get the actual percentage of foreign aid that is received from US and the affiliated entities. So to do that, I have already classified the entities that we have in the aid giving table under US direct donor, US influence multilateral, and others. Others are those entities that they don't have any relationship with. So let's import that classification. You can actually download this data that I've classified from my GitHub. So it's a workbook, and go to the location, and this is it, US affiliated donor classification. There's no cleaning to be done on this. Nice. So the first thing, change the layout, rename it US affiliated donor classification, right? Nice. Now let's take a visual inspection. Look at this entity. You can see that the adaptation fund starts from the row 2 and ends at row 14. Let's check the aid giving. This is the aid giving. It's the same thing. It's important that they are the same because we want to use the VLOOKUP function to match values from the two different tables, right? So to do that, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a copy of this aid giving table. 8 given table, create a copy, and yeah, we rename it US donor analysis. Nice. So let's move this. Let's move it to here. Good. Now we are using a VLOOKUP function because we want to look up these entities in this classification and return either yes or 0. If it is a match, it will be yes. If it is not a match, it will return 0. So we have VLOOKUP. Let's use the formula bar. VLOOKUP. The value that we're looking up, want to look up for is the A2. So A2, we want to look for it in the range of this. This is the range we want to look up the value for. Now we want to return the value from the column 2 because right now we are considering the US direct donor and it is the column 2 in this range. So this is 2 and we want it to return the exact value, which is false. Nice. So let's actually run this column. Let's copy this. Good. So this is the US direct donor, right? So for entities that are direct donor, you will see a yes. But for entities that are not directly from the US, it will return a 0. Let's use autofill. This is expected because if you look at what we have here, it is looking up the year value. It is looking up year from here. And we don't have year here. So it does not match, right? What we have to do is to lock up this A2 cell. Lock it up so that it would always look up values that are from column A. Now, let's autofill, sorry. Nice. Now, if you put this thing down, it's going to give you the value that you have here. It's the same thing and it's totally supposed to be because it is also returning the second values from the second column in the range that we selected. So for US influence multilateral, we wanted to return value from the third column. Nice. For others, we wanted to return values from the fourth column. Good. Now this is what we have and we will go further from here to calculate the total aid and their percentages that US direct donor gave, US influence multilateral gave, and the ones that came from others. So to do that, we are using the sum ifs because there's going to be a condition. Sum ifs, we want it to sum the ODA table, right? This is the values that should be summed and we want it to sum it if and only if the values that come from the US donor is what? Is yes. Now be very mindful because it's very case sensitive. So this is what we have and let's autofill for the rest of the others. Now it's expected, right? Because if you look at here, you would see that it keeps on moving. Now it's summing this and this is not even a number, so it should not even sum it at all. So what we should do is to lock the column C. still giving us the same value. But then when we drag it to this, you will see that we have a totally different answer, and this is exactly what we are looking for. Now you can decide to do this calculation after, like at the end of this column, but I want to do it here because I want to be able to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to rename this as total US aid. Okay, US direct donor. Rename this to total US influenced multilateral. Rename this to total US total donor from others. Alright, good. Next is to calculate the percentage total US direct aid. That's the percentages of this amount, because we want to see that on our dashboard, right? So to do that, we'll just divide this by the total amount, and we should have this. Let's change it to the percentage. So this is 16, and we can go ahead and clear the rest. Nice. We do the same thing for the others. Okay. We do the same thing for the US influence multilateral, and we should have this divided by total. See why I calculate this thing up there, so I don't have to move it down. Change it to percentage and clear the rest. Good. Do the same for others. So for the others, this should be this divided by the total. And we should have this. Sorry about that. So when you calculate all of this, it should total to 100, right? That should tell you that we are on track. So we'd want to get the total now for US alone. So to do that, we just do some little addition. Divided by the total, right? And that should give us 27%. Or we could have just added this straight, but anyone works. So this is all for the US. So now we know that out of all the donation that was given from the timeline, which is 2010 to when 2022, that the US contributed 27%. US and its affiliated organizations contributed 27%. So you might think that 27%, the total aid, is quite small, but it's not small, it's a lot, because when you check how much this totals to, you would know how much needs it can solve, right? So let's just rename this To rename it, we'll just copy what we have here, put it here, and just put a percentage by the side. So you can do that from your end. The last but not the least is to project an estimate of HIV deaths per $1 million that is withdrawn by the US. To do that, we use the simple formula this. So we use G2, open your bracket, G2 plus H2 divide by 1 million, close the bracket, times by impact ratio, which is 1800. And let's make, so this is what we are having, right? What this means is that for the 27% amount that is coming from the US, this was the number of deaths that has been averted over time. Imagine this 27 didn't come, and imagine now that it is frozen. This is the number of deaths that would have occurred. It is quite a lot, right? Next is to conduct pivot analysis, and we are going to be doing that using pivot table. So starting with entities with high impact ratio, we want to get the top 3. So the first thing is to click on anywhere in any cell in the merge data sheet and go to your insert tab, and you insert pivot table. You want it to create in a new sheet. So what we're interested in is to move the entity to the rows, and mind you can only move values, numbers to the value. So we move the impact ratio per $1 to the values, and we want it to show the average, not the count. To change the field to average. Nice. Next, you click the anywhere on the entity and filter by top 10. Then because we want top 3, we'll go with it. Good. So these are the countries that have likely high impact ratio. So we rename this, rename it as entity with high impact ratio, right? Good. The second pivot analysis we are doing is the AIDS related deaths versus deaths averted within a time frame. And to get that information, we should work the HIV data. So we click anywhere, go to the insert tab, click on pivot table, and this time around we have an existing worksheet that we're working with. So we select it and we go to the location. This should be it, and we click want it to start from here, right? So because of that, I actually want you to start from here, because we will be adding the dynamic buttons at this place. This means we have to redo this part to shift it further, right? So click on enter and OK, and we're interested in the year. Good. We're interested in the year, which goes to the rows, and the sum of AIDS related deaths and the sum of AIDS averted deaths. Nice. Since we have this, let's quickly correct what we have here. Select everything, Ctrl C, and let's paste it from here so that we can clear what we have here. Nice. Now we can copy this, cut it, can call what we have here, Ctrl X, and we have it here. Good. And for this, we don't need to filter it because this is what we need. The next on our list is to get the top 5 donors. The top 5 donors. If I'm to get this, I'll highlight everything, copy it, and under this pivot table, you can paste this. Instead of going back and forth, inserting pivot table, you can copy and paste, right? Good. So first thing, remove this and remove this. Remove the both of them. And this is not the table we want to work with. For us to get the top 5 donors, we should go to the aids giving table. So let's check for all the tables, and this is the aid giving table. Top 5 donors, we are interested in the entity and the ODA. The ODA giving. Nice. We filter it. Top 5. Nice. So we can decide to rename this because it is too long. We can rename this to entities. Nice. And the title for it should be top 5 donors. Now let's take a look at what we have here. The top 5 donors. We can decide to sort it by from highest from largest to smallest. To format, we use the if function. Let's work with the formula bar. If you look at this cell, you could see that this is column C and it is 50, right? So if C50, right, if it is greater than or equal to 1 trillion, a trillion has 12 zeros. The text format should be this: C50 divide 1 trillion, and because it's a currency, it should be in dollar, and you should attach the trillion, to it. Else this is not true. You should return this. C50 divide 1 billion, which is 9 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And the same text format for the output in dollars to decimal places. And this time around, you should attach billion to it. We close, and exactly this is what you want to see. It is easier for your audience to interpret this than this, so we use the autofill and drag it down. Wonderful. So this is what we will see, we will use when we are creating our chart, right? The next is to make a pivot table for top 5 recipients. And if you take a look, let's take a moment to look at these top 5 donors. You can see that United States is the single highest donor. All these ones are merged, are entities, countries that are coming in one, but the United States is the single highest donor. It is something remarkable because remember the background to our analysis. So we highlight everything, we copy it, and we paste it here. Good. But instead, we would remove this remove what we have here, and once that is removed, we'll go to the aid received table. We are dealing with entities in the rows and the ODA they received, right? Nice. The same thing we did here. You're interested in the top 5. Nice. And we are to rename this. Nice. And let's quickly copy this formula and use it here. Okay, let's try again. Copy it. If it doesn't paste, write it manually. Nice. So this is what we want. Good. Next, we check if there is a correlation between aids received and the number of deaths averted. To do that, we will use the merged data. So we can easily copy what we have here and let's paste it here. Nice. So we don't need this. We don't need this. Let's check for merged data. So we have our entities here and ODA received, and one last thing, deaths averted. Nice. So this is what we have right now, and what we'll be using for this correlation is a scatter plot. A scatter plot does not do well with pivot table, so we can just copy what we have here and let's paste it here. I don't know what is this. Whatever it is, you have to remove it. Nice. Or we can just clear it. Good. So when you clear or you clear every formatting that comes with it. If you just delete, it might just delete the content. So that's why you use clear. So we have to copy this again. We just copy and paste it right here. Good. So we'll continue with whatever we are doing. Let's name this correlation between deaths averted and aids received. Nice. To check, we want to check the trend of aids received. How does it move over time? So we'll copy what we have here nice. Remove this and remove this. Table will work with aids received, right? Because we want to check now, because you're dealing with time, the A should come over here and we have to remove this as well. And OAD receipt should come over here. Nice. Because we don't need this, we can make do with them. Good. And let's rename this aids aid received over time 1960 to 2022, right? Good. The last but not the least for our pivot analysis is to get 8 related debts versus 8 abated debts in relation with entities. So we want to see how each entity has fared so far. To do that, let's quickly copy what we have here and paste it right here. Good. And for us to be able to do that, we'll remove this and we can use the HIV data. Entity, its related debts, and its averted debts, right? Good. Can rename this as entity AIDS debt averted versus debt. Nice. Moving on, we perform analysis that is centric to Africa. But before that, let's rename this sheet. Pivot analysis. Right. The next thing is to perform an Africa-centric analysis of focuses on Africa. And to do that, we are going to insert another classified data. It is a workbook. So we import Africa ODA classification, right? Sheet 1, load. We close this, change the style. Nice. So this is what we have right now. And we change this to number. Right? Good. The first thing we do is that we calculate the total of ODA. So we sum using the sum function. We should sum from this down to this. Nice. So this is total ODA. The next thing, let's make it to be number because we're performing calculations with it. Next is to calculate the sum of Africa, aid received by Africa. Next is to calculate the sum of ODA received by Africa. And to do that, we are going to use a conditional statement for when this is yes. We rename this to total ODA received. So to do this, we are using the sum if, right? We are telling it to check this. If the condition is yes, then it should sum. The yes is a capital case, be careful. Then it should sum what is here. And this is what we are looking for. We make it to be number 2. Nice. Now to get, we rename it to Africa ODA received by Africa. Nice. To get the ODA received by non-Africa, we can simply use the sum if function, but this time around it will be when the condition is no, or we can say this minus this, and it will give us the answer, right? Remember that we don't need these ones, so we can simply delete them. Nice. Next is to get their percentages, but before that, let's quickly rename this column to ODA received by non-Africa. Good. Now to get their percentage, we'll use percentage by Africa, which should be this, divide this, and let's delete the whole of this. So we increase the decimal point to be able to see the decimal places and convert it to percentage accordingly, and we also drag it so that it can calculate for the non-Africa, right? So one of the reasons I don't like using cell references, it's most times it's bulky, but you can manage it yourself if you are conversant with it. So now we calculate for non-Africa and we are getting what we need, so we don't need this rest. We highlight them and press your delete key on the keyboard and you delete them. So the next thing is, let's rename these columns to percentage aid received by Africa, percentage ODA by Africa, right? Nice. And we do the same for the non-Africa, right? Percentage ODA by non-Africa. Nice. So this is what we have right now. We go ahead and rename this sheet. Rename it to Africa centric. Now we head over to creating pivot charts, and to do that we simply use the pivot tables that we have created. So we'll click on anywhere here, go to insert recommended chart, and the chart we want to use for this particular one is a donut chart. So we will insert it and we'll quickly format. The first thing is to hide all fields from bottom on chart so that we can create more space, and the next is to format this data label. You can bring it somewhere here. Nice. Next, let's enable the data labels and we'll edit it. Go to more, and instead of showing as value, we want it to show as percentages, right? And the text option, the color should be white. Good. Now click on anywhere that is outside the chart, click inside the chart and click here, and we can move this. Good. The next thing is to format the color of this, the partitions of the chart. So we click and click again, so it is selecting the 87% part and we want to change the color. So we come here, the color we want to use is this. If you want to check for the color code, I'll quickly show you. So the color code is 03296. We also change the color code for 6%. 6% is actually very bad. So these colors are influenced by the values that they have. So we can use red for 6% to show that it is actually bad, because it is, and do the same thing for 7%. Even though it is closer to very bad, we use orange. Orange always shows warning. Okay, that's not what we want. Nice. So we use orange. That is not orange. Okay, this works. For the data labels, let's make it bold. Good. So I think we have what we need. The last thing is to rename this chart. So rename it to entities with high impact ratio. Good. And you can, make it bold, make the font size bigger or smaller, depending. So I want to make it smaller. And I think we have what we need for now. We can also format this data lab, this, to reduce the font size. Let's check. Okay, that's all. The next chart is this. So insert, go to recommended chart, and we want to use a combo chart for this. So I will change this to just line, and this is already line, and this is what I want. Click OK. So let's quickly format. The first thing is to always hide all the field buttons. This makes it, gives more room for the chart. Next is to change the color. So it says sum of 8 related dates is blue. So dates should always be reckoned with red, not blue. So we change the color to red, dark red, and date averted is something good. So we change it to green. Nice. The next thing is to delete this, and we disable the grid lines, enable chart title, and enable up and down bars. Now the next, let's format this date, change the interval so that it will stop being so clustered. Alright, specific interval, and let's use 5. Nice. The next thing is to change, format this, the y-axis, and let's click on format axis. What we want to do is to make it more readable at a glance. So instead of category general, we use custom, because we want to write out the formula ourselves. So the formatting I'm using is, when it is greater than or equal to 1 million, it should divide by a million. You can see the 2 commas indicating million, and attach an M to it, else it should divide by 1000. When it is greater than or equal to 1000, it should divide by 1000. This is 1 comma, and attach a K to it, which is thousands. So this is what we want. And let's edit this chart title, right? Ctrl Z. Let's edit the chart title to debt versus Debt averted. And we put the timeline 1990 to 2022. If I'm correct, it should be right. You can check that from the pivot table itself. Yes, this is 2022, 1990 to 2022. So you can make this bold, reduce the font size, and I think we are good to go with this for now. Next, let's get the pivot chart for these top 5 donors. So we click anywhere here and insert a recommended chart, but we want a bar chart, right? Let's quickly format this. We start by deleting this. Okay, it seems that it is not responsive right now, but we will come back to it. Let's rename this top 5 donors, right? Okay, you can decide to make it bold and reduce the font size. Good. Next, let's close this. We disable the grid lines and enable data labels. Remove the legend, we don't really need it. Now let's edit the data labels for more readability, right? So click on it and format the data labels. We want the data labels to appear in trillions, so we want it to take these values. Nice. And once it takes this value from the cells that we indicated, we don't want to see the other values anymore. So I think that is it for the data labels. Now the color, we want to change the color. So the fill is going to be a green because these are donors, right? And donors are good. So let's take a green color. How about this green? I think it's too light. Can check for more fill, and we use this color code 128 1280, right? So let's use this color code and see what we have. Nice. This is what we want. So the last thing to do here is to remove these data labels. Since that like it's not responding, we want to hide these field buttons. So we'll leave it at this and come back to it quickly. Let's insert chart for the ODA received, right? So we also want it to be a bar chart. Nice. Okay, so let's format. So we sort it from smallest to largest. Nice. And we hide the data labels. It's still not responding, so let's rename it. To rename it, this is top 5 receivers, right? Top 5 aid receivers. Nice. So that should do it. Okay, let's make it bold and reduce the font size. Good. Next, do the same thing we did for the other one. We disable the grid line, enable the data label, disable the legend, and we format the data label to show something that is readable. Format from cells, and we want it to read the values from here to here, right? Good. Now we uncheck for value. So this is so easy. When someone looks at it, the person can easily know what you are talking about. You don't need to stress your audience, right? Good. For this, let's see what we can do for the x-axis. Let's see what we can do for the x-axis. So let's use a custom and let's add this. Okay, this seems way better, right? Nice. So is there any other thing? No, I think this is okay. The last thing is to change the color, the fill color. Since they are receivers, you might as well put it in red, but instead of a very bright red that is dark, that shows danger, let's give a dark red, but still they are receivers. So that distinguishes receivers from donors. Moving on, next pivot is to show the correlation between debt averted and aid received. Now, correlation does not work with the pivot table as we can see. Let's try correlation, which is best visualized using the scatter plot. Scatter plots most times does not work with the pivot table as we can see. So we are going to use a trick. So this is XY scatter, and it says you cannot use an XY scatter bubble or stock chart type with a chart that has been created from pivot table data. So the hack to this, I think we already did it, yes. So we are going to just select these ones, this data set that we copied and pasted the other time. Right, now we will go to insert and we can now insert our XY chart. So let's take this. Nice. So we have to format it. To format, first of all, let's remove the grid lines. Nice. And let's enable trend line. Good. The next thing we have to do here is to format this, the XYZ, format x-axis to something very readable. We want it to be custom, and remember how we get this custom. If you can look closely, this is if it is greater than or equal to 1 trillion, it should divide by trillion. That's why you're having 4 commas and attach 80 to it. So in the same manner, you can do for billion, million, thousands, right? Nice. So we do the same thing for here for the y-axis. Go to numbers, format, go to custom, and we are using the same one from previous. Does it work? Let's use the billion. Okay, this works. Now the next thing is to rename this to correlation between debts averted and debt averted. Let's put it that way. Between debts and debts averted, right? So we can make this bold, and here we can reduce the font size. So there's one last thing I want to do, because from here it might be hard to interpret, but if we edit this trend line, we are going to tell it to show us to display the R square value on the chart. This tells us how strong or weak the correlation is. So from here you can see that it's saying there's a strong correlation, but most times the scatter plot is not a good measure of correlation. So that's why we are using so many methods. By the time we finish the analysis, we determine whether this is actually correct. So let's change this trend line to red. The color, let's make it bright red. Nice. Before we finally leave this correlation chart, we want to touch up the scattered plots a bit. So to do that, let's further edit the x-axis. So format it further and let's set it to logarithmic scale. Exactly. So this makes it more spread out for the next pivot table, and that should be foreign aid received over time. So as we know, the line chart always goes with trend, that's time. So let's insert recommended chart and let's use the line chart, right? Good. So first of all, we delete this. So it's still not responding. I wonder what is the problem. We'll come back to it. So let's disable the grid lines and disable the legend. You don't really need it. Next is to format the x-axis. So we can use an interval of 5 years so as to make our chart more readable. Let's close this. It's under labels. Specify interval and should be under every 5 years. Right. Next, let's format the y-axis and we use the custom format. Nice. So the next thing is to change the color of this trend line. You can make it the dark blue that we used before previously. Okay. A dark blue. Nice. So let's rename this chart as age received, and we know the timeline is from 1960 to 2022. Nice. Make it bold and reduce the font size. That's okay. So I think this is okay. Apart from this, it should hide. You should be able to right click and hide all field buttons. Next, let's quickly insert pivot chart for the next pivot table. So that should be the entity debt versus debt averted, right? So the table is long, so we want to pick the first 10. So let's let's filter for the top 10, and yeah, this should be it. Again, let's sort from largest to biggest. Alright, now let's insert our pivot chart. Go to the insert tab, recommended chart, and we're using the area chart this time around. I want it to be stacked area chart. This way it will show us the components of each of them. Next is to delete this. It's still not responding, but it should respond from your own end. So we enable chart title, disable the grid lines, disable the legend, don't really need it, and let's work on this to make it more readable. Format axis, go over to number and make it custom. So here we can leave it at this. We are using million and thousand. So this is, we name it entity debt versus debt averted. Right. Now we're done with our bodies and we can reduce the font size. So with this, we are done with the visualization. The next thing to do is to quickly create our dashboard, right? So before doing that, let's hide this because we really need to remove this. And if this is not responding from your end as mine is doing, here's another hack. So you click on anywhere in the chart, right? Go to analyze, and under this show or hide, you expand it and we hide all. Exactly. So this is how we want it to be, clean and neat. So we can do the same for every other chart that we've created so far. So click on anywhere, go to analyze, hide. Good. So the same thing. Now let's add another sheet and we'll call this sheet the dashboard, right? Dashboard. Good. So the first thing to do is we've already removed the formula bar. We'll hide the headings and the grid lines. So next is you can highlight everything, go to home and give it a color. So you want to give it a very light gray color, something very light, something like this. Nice. So this is what we have right now, and we'll go ahead and add a shape. We'll go ahead and add shape. So insert, go to shapes. Sorry. So let's add the shape. This is the place where the buttons will lie, right? Nice. Change the color to black. Good. Next, we insert another shape, and this time around let's add a shape that has rounded edges. So from here you can draw this shape, and let's reduce the width, increase the length of this one, and want this shape to white in color, so make it white. And we want it to have this shadow. Nice. Good. Copy this. Yes, let's copy and paste, then resize it. This is where the timeline, the calendar will be. And now let's copy and also paste for the KPIs. So we'll be having at least over 4 KPIs. We'll keep on inserting as we go and adjust as. So let's copy, paste it, this together. I hold and highlight. I'm holding the shift key, and let's go to home and let's go to format. So to align, let's align this, align to the top. Now all of them are on the same level. I'm going to take my time and resize it to how we need it. So I'll pause the video and resize it and we'll come back. We'll add the background to the chart that we'll be importing and be adding it one after the other. So I'm going to copy what I have here and paste. Then I'll resize. So this is what we have right now. The space that you have here will be for the slicers. I'll pivot to analysis and we'll copy this chart. We'll start from our donut. Copy this. You can cut it because it's not needed there anymore. And we want it to be here. Paste. So the first thing to do is that we want to move the shape fill to no fill because it will automatically take the white shape of this background and reduce it in such a way that it enters this shape, right? Nice. So we can reduce this. Good. And the data labels. Let's move this so the data labels can have more space. So all this, you can format it any way you feel you're comfortable with, but it's just okay to make it more aesthetically pleasing to the eyes. And we can also use the sizes of these, right? And I think we have what we need here. It seems the width of this Arduino chart is quite tiny, so we want to increase it. So you can click on it and format data points. So you can increase it to be more full. I think this is okay, right? And for the data point, we can also reduce it to fit well. You can either insert a text box here or write directly on it if that permits. So I should go with text box. Go to insert under your shapes. You see this letter and you can draw what you have here. And the title is increase the font size. This is not what you want. You want to increase the font size of everything. Make it bold. Nice. This means you have shape and increase the size of the shape. Nice. So we want this to not have any outline or fill. No fill, no outline. Nice. This is the title. You can also insert another text box to write the subtitle because this definitely has a subtitle. And our subtitle, we have global trends, Africa focus, US age, withdrawal, impact. Select everything and increase the shape. Make it bold. You can change the color this time around to blue. Let's use this blue. Or you can make it a green. It should have no outline and it should have no fill. Right? For this, we should have the calendar and the timeline that we're working with. So KPIs. So the first thing we are starting with is the total age received. Okay, so first let's insert the text box. And we can say this is your total age received, right? Make it bold, increase the font size. It should have no fill. Neither should it have an outline. Nice. So you can position it to the center and you can copy this, paste it, and edit it to actually insert the total age received. So we delete this and to insert it, we use the formula bar right now. Let's enable the formula bar. So we start with an equal to sign and we go over to the age received table because what we have here is not readable, the readable format that we actually want it to be. Let's first of all fix that. So let's go to our age received and let's fix this. Set equal to using the if function. Remember, if what we have here, this should be our C13375, right? If it is greater than or equal to 1 trillion, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, then something should happen. It should return a text format in this form. C13375 divide 1 trillion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And because it is in dollars, so it should come with the currency sign and should come into decimal places, right? And we want you to attach the trillion to it. Else, it should also return a text that is in billion for us, right? We have C13375 divide 1 billion, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and we want it to return a number, a currency that is in two decimal places, while also attaching billion to it, right? So this is what we want you to give us at that place. So we go back to our dashboard and continue with our formula. Equal to, go over to aid receipt table and it should give us this. Nice. Bring out Africa affiliated aid receipt, the percentage that Africa received in all of this, right? So to do that, let's copy this and edit it. Place it here and edit. So we have Africa affiliated percentage aid received. And highlight everything and reduce the font size. Align it to the center by bringing this down. Okay. Now that we've written the Africa related age receipt, let's insert the percentage that Africa occupies in all of this and possibly insert the amount itself. So to do that, we go to our pivot analysis or we go to the Africa centric analysis because that's where we should find it, right? But this is the percentage that Africa occupies. To be able to do this, we have to make this, cut it and put it below what we have here. Of course, it would not do, so we will calculate total ODA divide ODA by non-Africa divide the total ODA received and make it percentage so that way, nice. So this way now we can select both of them and insert a donut chart, right? So this is what we want. So let's format this chart and delete this because we're not deleting it. We can delete the title, delete whatever it is that is here. We can also format this and change the color, right? So because we're interested in the percentage of Africa, this place we can make it white and nice. This is what we want to see because we're interested in Africa. So we can reduce the size further and also remove the fill. Nice. The way we can do is to insert a text box inside here. That's the way we can insert our percentage because we cannot just write it here, it will not be dynamic. So to do that, go to insert and insert a text box and we'll have it all the way here. Go to our formula bar and we can just click here and this is it. So we can make it bold and increase the size, right? Then center it and this is perfect, right? So we can copy what we have here right now. We can copy this chart, go to our dashboard, we want it to be placed here. So this is what we want to achieve. Next thing is to put the amount itself beside here. So we can place it here while also editing what we have here. So we go back to our Africa-centric table, and this is the amount that Africa received. Meanwhile, we don't want it to appear this way. Remember, we have to use the readable format. So let's clear this formula. We'll get back to it. So this is equal to, if E2 is greater than or equal to 1 trillion, then you should return the text format in this form: E2 divide 1 trillion, and it is in dollar, two decimal places, and we want you to attach the trillion to it, right? Else, you should return a text with billion. So E2 divide 1 billion, and should return a value in dollar, two decimal places, and attach the billion word to it, right? So this is what we wanted to return. So we delete this and insert a total new text box, right? And we go to our formula bar, right? So this is Africa centric. Africa centric exclamation mark, and the formatted cell is actually E3. E3. So that's what we have there. So let's format what we have here. Increase it, increase the font size, make it bold, right? Is everything bold? Good. So this is what we have. You should have no fill. Neither should it have an outline, right? So nice. So this is for Africa. This is what Africa received for this whole timeline. The next we want to calculate is the total debt. So let's insert another text box, right? And we call it total debt. Make it bold. Increase the font size. Global should be smaller. Highlight everything. Make it bold. This should have no fill, so you can format accordingly. We make this global to be smaller than the rest of the letters because the focus is not on it. We can use this. So we start with the equal to sign, but for us to do that, we should check our HIV data and see that we've calculated this number. So when we come here, this is the column for age related dates. We've not calculated it, so let's quickly do that. To do that, we use the equal to sum, the sum function, and this is the column E, which should start from E2 to E. It should stop at E6030, right? Nice. So this is what we have. Now let's quickly make it in a readable format, just like we've always done, using the if function. So we have equal to, if this value here, which is our E63, can go ahead and do it. And now we've gotten both the number of total dates, number of total awarded dates, so we can go further to our dashboard. So here we have equal to, use the formula bar, go over to our HIV data. This is what we want it to show. Nice. So let's increase the font size, right? and make it bold. Nice. So this one size is 20. Let's check what we have here because we want it to come easy. So it's also 20. Now let's center it. And then you format well, center it well. So we have 114 million dates for the timeline that the data set was collected. So the next thing on our list is to get the dates averted. Meanwhile, for this, because we're talking about dates, let's format this text to represent dates because red is known for death or bad, and we can even make it more intuitive by inserting the symbol of HIV since we are talking about HIV. So let's insert this logo and we make it smaller. All of these pictures you would find in my GitHub. Resize it to enter that. Now let's check what we have here. So if you notice, you can see that this is dark red while this one is light red. So let's make it uniform. Data analysis is similar to you being an artist, a graphic designer. So you need to make your work as aesthetic as possible. So this is more, right? Then let's go over to debt advantage. Nice. To get the US affiliated donation, we want to do exactly what we did for Africa affiliated aid. That means we should get a donor chart that shows us the percentage and then the amount by the side. So to do that, let's head over to our donor analysis, and right here we've calculated these numbers already. So this is not looking good because we don't really need the rest of these things. We can delete them, right? So this is what we are working with. Now the first thing to do is to copy what you have here, and at this column we paste as value. Okay, next thing, let's get the remainder of the percentage for others. So we get 73%. Now we highlight these both. We highlight the both of them and we go to our insert tab and we insert this donut chart. Nice. So let's quickly format this. We want to make the color a very light blue color. Nice. So the next thing is to add the 27 at the center because that is our focus. Let's delete this rest. So to do that, we insert a text box, and this is a text box that we can insert right here. So we use our formula bar, and this sheet, the name is US Donor Analysis. Use your exclamation mark, and the cell is M2, right? So we can let's lock this M2 so that it doesn't change even as we move. Nice. So like this, you can make it bold. Let's increase the font size and center it. Nice. So you can bring it down or center. Okay, so this is what we want, right? Now let's take this, cut it, go to our dashboard and we paste. So we are not done with the formatting. The fill, there should be no fill, right? Nice. Next thing to do, quickly insert the amount that corresponds to this, right? To do that, insert another text box right here. But before we are able to write the amount, let's go over to our donor analysis and format this amount. Format this to number. Format this to number. It's already formatted. So let's quickly add these two. So we have this plus this, and this is what we have. So let's make it in a readable format by using our formula. You can go ahead and write this formula. We've gotten this, so let's go over to our dashboard and quickly write it. So let's increase the font size, make bold. And format accordingly. Next, let's get the impact ratio. To get the impact ratio, we have to go back to our US donor analysis and check for where we've calculated it. Alright, so let's calculate the impact ratio. Before that, let's give this a name. So this is total US affiliated donation. Nice. Next, we have to get the impact ratio. We want to know how many deaths, right? So to do that, we have equal to what we have here divided by 1 million, because we are working with per $1 million of aid given, right? And it should give us by 1,800, which is the number that we got when we did our estimation. So what this math is doing is that we are trying to estimate if this total number of US donation is removed, how much impact does it have? How much debt is occurred? So when we click enter, we can see what we have here. So to enable more readability, we copy and we paste here. So we have 10.39 billion debts. So we have to edit this to remove the dollar sign, because right now we are talking about debts. So this is 10.39 billion debts that would have been advantage. Back to our dashboard and let's insert so this our estimate is meant to be here. The impact ratio is 1,800 deaths per 1 million naira. Estimated debt per $1 million withdrawn by US. Now let's do for that of the impact ratio. Let's copy what we have here and we can take it here and right here we change what we have here. So it should be in our merge data. Then I'll click here, right? And this should be it. Increase the font size. The last two things that are missing here is to add our slicer and the hyperlinks with the objects. So let's quickly add them. Let's start with the hyperlink and objects. We'll go to insert. We'll start with the icon for the project itself, which is this, the title. We have something nice, and for this we don't really need to add a link because it's talking about the title. The next is to add the one for this our dashboard, and for the dashboard we have this. The hyperlink, and it should be in this document and it should be our dashboard, right? So we've added that. Next, let's insert for aids giving. Hyperlink. This is aids giving. Next, we insert for aids received. So right now, go to your view, enable headers. Now place your cursor on A, Ctrl C, Ctrl page down. What you should do is to copy this and go to the column A of your sheets to paste them. The last but not the least thing we have to do here is to add slicers. We make use of our pivot analysis sheet. You can click on any of the pivot charts, go to your insert and insert slicer. So we want to insert two slicers for year and for entity, right? So now let's report connections so that it can connect to other tables. Nice. Do the same thing for here. Report connections. Good. So now we can cut it and paste on our pivot on our dashboard. So select this one by holding down your shift key and also highlight this, and you can cut. Now we paste it on our dashboard. So let's format what we have here, right? So the first thing is to change the number of columns it has. We want it to have 3. You can add 4 if you wish. So this is for entity. So you can use this to go up or to go down, right? So place this here, make it be at the same size as this. Do the same for here. Right click, size and properties, position and layout, number of columns. Here we want it to be 3. Nice. So from here now, you also format, and you can place this right here. So you can see that 4 is not favorable for us for this particular one, so we can reduce it to 3, or let's adjust. So I think we have something nice, right? Take your time to format well. So we have something nice, and you can play around. You can see that it makes your chart dynamic. Nice. So let's clear the filter. So you can decide to customize these slicers by holding down the slicer, going to option, and new style slicer. You can call it any name, say black slicer, because I want it to be black, right? Then the header, what should happen? You open it. Let's make the header white, right? And I think that should be what I should format. The fill of this header should be black. The border of the header should also be black. I'll say okay. So this is what you will see. Next, selected item with data, what should happen to it? Okay, the whole slicer, what should happen to the whole slicer? We want the color of the whole slicer to be black, right? Nice. Now for selected item, what should happen to it? When you select an item, we want it to be a light blue, something very light, right? Nice. Selected item with no data, we don't want anything to happen to it, so let's leave it that way. Unselected items should now turn to gray. Nice. And when you hover over a data item, what should happen? You should also change the color to something light. So let's format and click OK and see what we have. So when we come here, we can apply this, and this is what we will have here, right? You can format it anyhow you want it to. It is your story to tell. So this is what we have, and if I click on this or this, See what happens. It's making the chart dynamic and gives us a filtered response based on what we have. So if you deem it necessary to add as many moisturizers as you want, please do go ahead and add them. And that is how you build a complete dashboard. That is how you start an analysis that has real impact. Do your analysis, perform your visualizations, and build a comprehensive dashboard. The last but not the least is to draw insights from the analysis, because it is not complete till you share your findings, right? So I've taken my time to look at what we have here and I came up with these insights. You can on your own go deeper into the analysis and dig out more details that you think are shown with the analysis that we've conducted, right? Starting from the dashboard, the key metrics that we had, we have total aid received, which is 42.19 trillion, showing that there has been actual investment globally. Then the aid that was given to Africa within that timeline was 16% of this amount, which should round up to 6.91 trillion. We also have that total HIV deaths was 114 million in this timeline. This indicates high global death burden. People have actually died from HIV/AIDS. We also have that deaths averted globally, which is 56 million, meaning that aid and intervention have saved lives. There is US contribution, which is 27%. We'll go deep into it in this US donor section. And then the impact ratio, which shows us high effectiveness per $1 million invested, because it's not per dollar, it is per 1 million. So let's correct that. Nice. So, and we have the estimated debt. We have that if the US withdraws their funding, this is the number of persons that could die, and this would actually set back the hands of progress that has been achieved over the years since general insights. Then to focus on the US itself, we already know that the US contributed 27%. Now this 27% from our analysis in the US donor, we could see that the US entity alone gave 16%, while the affiliated gave 11, which totals both of them to 27%. To rank the donors that we had from this chart that we have here, the top 5 donors, we see that the US, the top 5 donors, we can see that US is only the single country that's among the top 5 donors. All of these are affiliations of other countries that came together to form an association. US is the single top donor and the top second after dark countries. Now when you now combine countries that actually came together to make a foreign aid donation, US ranks second. This tells us something. Let's move on. Life-saving impacts. You have the 1,800 lives were saved per 1 million aid. Withdrawal consequences, we already said it. 10.39 billion lives at risk if the US pulls out. This is a very large number. And we are already seeing the impact from the news. We are already seeing the impact, like it is already showing. So this is confirming that our analysis is confirming the news and other analysis that have been conducted in this particular aspect. So we have the recommendation is advocate for sustained HIV, US involvement in HIV/AIDS funding. Like even if they have to pull out, they shouldn't pull out on HIV care programs like PEPFAR and global funds, right? So we now focus on Africa. We see its share of aid that Africa received is 6.9 trillion, 16%. The major recipients are OECD. African countries that are part of the OECD received 2.032 trillion, and they are among the top 5 global recipients. We can see that from the chart here, right? And Outcome versus investment. Despite the large aid that Africa received, HIV/AIDS burden remains high in Africa. Then, areas of concern. There are so many things that could have caused it. It is either that the aid is being misused, there is weak follow-up, and so many failed systems that could be contributing to what we have, right? So strategies that is needed is to improve fund utilization. It's not a matter of how much you are giving. It's a matter of the little you are giving, how much are you able to do with it, right? So when we now streamline into HIV care, the global debt is 114 million deaths within the timeline, and about there was 56 million deaths, which you've already said before. Then peak intervention period was during the early 2000s. We can see that in our chart here. If you look at this death versus death averted within this time period, you can see that this is 2000, and from this 2000 quickly this green line, like we already know, is death averted, quickly increased, meaning that from here this is the middle, like 2005. From 2005, 2000, and the 2001, 2002, the deaths averted increased sharply and past that of the deaths that occurred. Then in subsequent years, you can see that this line remains constant. Like there is nothing much happening, with only slight increase or impact ratio. So we actually did well in the early 2000s, and AIDS are doing well now. And we've already said the causative factors that could be the problem. So current trend concern is that recent dip in effectiveness, like we've already said from this chart. Like instead of it, we are meant to see a chart that is progressing, knowing that okay, there's something happening, but the deaths remain. It's either that the deaths remain constant, or that the death averted also remain constant. There is no actually impact. That's the summary. So we also have this our scatter plot that shows us the correlation, showing that there's a correlation between aid and death averted. So if countries actually use the aid that they receive very well, there's going to be much more deaths averted. Then policy need: reinvest in targeted invention, prioritize high impact regions that we know are doing well, prioritize them instead of just giving aid because we are giving aid. On your own, you could go deeper and seek other insights that you can draw from this analysis. And with this, we'll wrap up with the portfolio project. If you enjoyed this video, thank you for watching. Hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification button, and watch out for more healthcare analysis from this channel. Till we come your way again, thank you for watching. Bye.